Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to Synchronicity Web TV. I am your host, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. Well, I'm so excited to celebrate with you today, Bear River. You've seen Bear on my channel before, that's for sure. He's taught at Synchronicity University before, that's for sure as well. And it is Bear that is back at Synchronicity University as part of the November 2024 speaker series. And as this is publishing, you've got a few days left to choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class. We've got this whole spooky, haunting theme happening, this magical theme happening. And Bear is going to fit right in with his ancestral astrological magic that we're going to talk about here today. Bear, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Nadia. It's always a privilege and an honor to be here.
And, you know, I'm just so proud of you. You just keep shining. You keep going out there in the astro world. You're an award-winning astrologer and you just keep doing your thing. And I love the voice that you bring to astrology. And I saw that right away. Like as soon as I met you or connected with you, I was like, oh, you've got to come to my school. You've got to come to my channel. Because I just love, I love seeing people know that they care about this. And when it's obvious they care and they're giving from this really pure place within, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So I loved watching you grow in that.
Oh, thank you so much. You are the very first astrologer who took note of my work, and you invited me onto your channel, I think literally a month or two after I started my practice. So Nadiya Shah is such a huge part of my story. I'm just always pleased to be able to participate in Synchronicity University and the giveaways in December. It's just, yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad. And I know I'm the first of many who've already come, who will continue to come. And so thank you for saying that, because that is so important to me, actually. Like, one of the people who served that function for me was the late, great Donna Van Toen.
Yeah.
And I love her so much. I still love her so much. And she was that person who really enjoyed giving people like their first opportunities, their first breaks. And I learned the joy of that from her so many years ago. And so it's just so rewarding when people tell me that I was that for them. And it just makes me remember her and how much I loved her. So thank you for that.
That's such a beautiful memory and connection. And yeah, you are carrying that baton in a serious way. And it's inspired me to go on and mentor with AFAN and do my part to promote the new to astrology, young astrologers and the young astrologers who, were just coming onto planet Earth when I was getting started.
Yeah, isn't it incredible? Like, there's something about astrology, like it's so resilient, right? And I happen to believe that if you are an astrologer, it's like you become part of this lineage. And every astrologer that's ever been, they are your ancestor. And so in many ways, we're just continuing that lineage along. And with our practice, we make our own contribution, whatever that is to be in this lifetime, that future generations of astrologers will be able to pick up on. And, I see ancestors in a few different ways. So one is, of course, our physical ancestors, because I know this is part of what you're going to be teaching soon at Synchronicity University. But I know, like, we have our physical ancestors, right? We're connected through DNA.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like DNA is like this mystical, magical thing or whatever. I think it's the ancestors that we awaken to that can be even more powerful, more meaningful in our lives, that we have soul connections with people that we might never know, might never meet. And of course, we have soul connections with people we don't share DNA with, and that's okay as well. We see so many examples of this. But it's incredible to awaken to, for example, with astrology, you awaken to this worldview of looking at the world mystically, symbolically, and you realize you are not the first, you are not alone. There were many, many more before you. There'll be many, many more after you. And to play that part in that ancestral lineage it's such a powerful thing. It brings so much reverence, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think about those folks as ancestors of the art. You know, as a musician, as an artist, I think there's so many different folks that you connect with. And I remember the, you know, in terms of art itself in the very literal sense, I remember first seeing a Kandinsky painting in a museum and just staring, I think for literal hours. Maybe it was only 45 minutes, but it was long enough that the security guard was getting kind of nervous. And my mom was like, God, kid, like, I'm going to leave and come back. You're old enough. Like, don't leave with a stranger. Do what you do. And it was just intensely mesmerized. And then I came to find out that Kandinsky was apparently into theosophy and kind of like on the outskirts of our astro mystical world. So recently learning that, I was like, oh, that explains it. I was like, yeah, the circles, the planets, man. And you know, with the ancestors of the art, I think folks can feel it. You know, you read all these different technical books. Maybe they're ancient, maybe they're medieval or Renaissance, maybe they're super hyper modern astrologers. And some books you read and you're like, yep, excellent. Thank you for teaching me this. And other books you pick up and you're like, this is in me. I'm remembering something is awakening inside of me. It's always been here. And astrology, I think, especially for me, I have a lot of different ancestors. I'm very, very mixed, but my matrilineal line is Alaskan Athabascan, and one of the the ways that we understand the stars is very literally as ancestors. Like, you know, your grandmother dies and she becomes a star, and that's very particular to my own story, but you know, belongs to my whole culture. And so every night when I look up at the stars, I'm sitting there just kind of amazed that on the one hand, there's these ancestors of art that speak through me and guide me to finding just the right book to help a client and understand the world in a certain way. But I also look up at the stars and I'm like, oh, you know, a few of you are known ancestors. I know who you are in that star, and others, I'm like, wow, all of these ancestors that we're connected to. And you know, if we go back far enough, we're all kind of distant cousins, some a little less distant than others. And so I look up and I'm like, I wonder how many of those stars are ancestors to everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
There are like trillions, gazillions of stars, like stars that we aren't even aware of yet are there. And it's interesting to contemplate how many people have incarnated into this world and we don't know about them, but we know that they were there in some way or another. We just know that the history of humanity is so vast that of course there were people on, you know, every corner of the planet and in every place in the world. And so how wonderful to see that link to the sky as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
last year I taught a summer course with Rooted Global Village, and I hadn't heard of them before. And they're pretty deep into like the ecological belonging and connection side of things. So when they approached me to talk about extending relationality to our more than human kin, and I was like, I can definitely do that through astrology. You found the right guy. But I realized for the first time I would be presenting about astrology to a group of folks who mostly had no background, and even some folks no interest in astrology. A few folks felt like, you know, that's really like Eurocentric. I don't know about that. Is that okay for me as a person of color to get into? And so I got to dispel some misconceptions. Like, actually, this is very deeply rooted in a lot of different types of folks, and the part of the world that astrology originates from is not in Europe. So we can, you know, you can feel comfortable embracing this as decolonial. But also in speaking to a group of folks who were not there for the astrology, but for the relationality, you know, I really just came back to again and again, almost every single person who has ever lived looked up at the stars and was like, what is happening up there? Oh my goodness, that's so beautiful. If you've ever had the privilege of being in a place with no light pollution, it like the meaning of the word awestruck really hits. Like you feel just almost accosted by how incredible and wonderful it is, just the entire sky alive.
It's incredible you mentioned that. There's a place that I think is bucket list. Like everybody should go there at least once in a life. And, you know, I'm a person who believes that places have spiritual energy and they serve different functions. And yeah, like any place really can be a pilgrimage if you are in the right frame of mind. But oh boy, this place I'm about to tell you, absolutely, it changed my life. And it was the salt flats of Bolivia. And so this is actually considered one of the wonders of the world. And it's called the mirror of the world, Espejo del Mundo. And when you go, it's like this vast, endless salt flat, just like it sounds. And one of the Star Trek or Star Wars parts of Star Wars were filmed there, like, you know, decades ago as well. But anyways, the floor, the ground reflects the sky. I'm going to try to pull up a photo here while we're talking. And I don't know, I think I did this for somebody else in one of the interviews I recently recorded. But it's like whatever's happening in the sky is reflected on the ground. And first of all, it's all salt. It's pure salt. And you know, salt has been used around the world in ritual to purify. So when I got there, just breathing in, I could feel this cleansing that was so powerful. Like I miss it. I almost feel like I want to go back just to have that feeling again. But the other thing is, just as you describe, I had never had the experience of feeling the sky so alive. You know, like I could see it just constantly in motion, constantly moving. And this idea of being enveloped by the sky. Okay, so here's a picture. I don't know how well you can see that with this light.
I
or
think I
whatever.
can
There
see you. Oh,
you can see me.
yeah.
Yeah. You can see
No,
how the sky and the
reflecting.
ground are like reflecting each other,
It's
right?
like literally walking in the stars.
It is exactly like that. Now, this was during the day. I think you can see that a little bit better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they have these like sunset tours. I mean, you go when it's like late afternoon, so the light is still there. But then it's at night when you see that. And it makes total sense that the ancients would look at that and see these vivid, endless mythological stories. Like it makes perfect sense when you see this. Like, of course, I can see it. It's like television. It's literally like watching television, right?
Just say original YouTube. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, man. It's like giving me chills just to imagine.
Yeah.
Just the top half being just like thrumming with celestial life is so incredible. But to just feel like there's nothing but the stars around you must be just the most incredible.
It was incredible. It's life-changing. It really is. And so that's one of the bucket places. I always tell people, like, I'm telling you, save your points. Get yourself there. I'm telling you, these are the places you want to go to make sure like you have those experiences that can be. But then I'm a Sagittarius moon. You know, I tell anybody who'll listen, before they know I'm an Aquarius sun, they know I'm a Sagittarius moon, because I just feel at home in the world in a way that I don't even feel at home where I was born and raised, which is Canada, which is Toronto. When I'm out in the middle of foreign languages and foreign spaces, that's when I really feel this. In hotels, I really feel comfortable. What's your moon sign?
Aquarius.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's so probably part of the synastry.
Yeah, that's true, right? So that Aquarian part of you is the one that's so open to astrology.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Even when I was like, this can't possibly work. But at the same time, when I first got into astrology, it was just, I had the type of zealous conversion that I think only a teenager can have, who's also rebelling against their family. So I converted to Buddhism when I was maybe 13 and was learning about reincarnation. And I was like, well, how would that even work? Like, how could you choose your incarnation to make sure a bunch of stuff happens to you? And I knew a little bit about astrology. So it's like, I wonder if like, we choose a birth chart, and that's how it works. 20 years later, I learned about electional astrology, and I'm like, oh, we elect a birth time. Got it. But yeah, that just like, if there's a way that people have thought about the world, even if I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me, the fact that other people have understood the world in that way makes it compelling to me. But I have Saturn in Sagittarius, so there's a certain part of me that's like, if we don't, the foundation has to be that type of exploration. And it just feels grounding to be in motion and traveling in that way. It's interesting that you mention salt at the flats there, the mirror of the world, because salt is, in different types of traditional astrological magic, salt is associated with Saturn, and Saturn is the planet that's most closely associated with like our grandparents or elders or our dead kin, our ancestors. And even in that like Platonic theory of celestial spheres, it's Saturn that's the gateway to the starry realms, or I really believe that's our ancestors up there. So it just feels like the ancestors want to come through in every little way they can, even in this talk.
It's incredible. So let me ask you, how can being aware of this connection of the stars as an expression of ancestors, of how our ancestors continue to live, how does that connect to your astrological practice?
It's a great question. There's a lot of different ways. I think as someone who, from a especially hardcore traditional perspective, my chart has some serious problems. Depending on who I go to, they might be like, hey man, that's a low-key curse. That's like, you shouldn't lean into that at all. And if you look at it in that way, it can be really depressing to get into traditional technique or to really start to parse a chart. But in thinking about it, instead of it being like a bunch of different check engine lights on the dashboard, that's bad, gotta go now, won't stop flashing, this is red alert. Instead, it's a conversation. It's like the chorus between all the elders at the dinner table when I was a kid. And sure, maybe some of them are like, hey, we got to make sure this doesn't happen, we need to fix that problem. But instead of it being a curse, it's just like a kind, caring warning to pay attention to something. It's, I think about the way that as a kid, when you're first old enough that you're not in the arms, you might try to walk across the street and not look both ways. And ideally, there's somebody who loves you who like grabs your arm and pulls you back and like, hey, don't do that. It's a little bit scary, but it's also so loving and so caring, and it's protective. And I think that shift to seeing our birth charts as a conversation between all of our ancestors and also the people we live with now. There's the ruler of the seventh house is much more your boss and your partner than it is you. And so I think looking at the chart in that way, it just makes it this symbol of connection and belonging rather than like a diagnostic manual of everything that's wrong with you.
Wow.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And how does all this connect to astrological magic? Because I know, like, once again, everybody, it is Bear River who's back at Synchronicity University as part of the November 2024 speaker series. And you've got a little time left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class. And Bear is going to be teaching about ancestral astrological magic. So can you just describe, I mean, I do want to give people something they can use and how they can practice this like right now, just based on what we talk about today. But why don't we start with like a definition of how you understand all of that going together, ancestral astrological magic?
Yeah. So one method of astrological magic that some folks might be more familiar with would be, the use of hymns or evocations or invocations. So, I've got a couple copies of the Orphic hymns here behind me. So you might recite a hymn to Saturn on Saturday at sunrise during Saturn's hour to draw down the power of Saturn or to surround yourself with Saturnian influences. Maybe you'll even have some kind of figure or statue or image that relates to Saturn for you. For me, I have my Saturn altar because I understand Saturn to represent elders and grandparents and ancestors very literally. I have this coffee mug from my great auntie, who I had the privilege of getting to interact with when I was a young kid. So I've got this coffee mug from an ancestor, and so I'm in one sense very literally combining more commonly understood like ancestral practices. I pour a cup of water to my ancestors to let them like have a place to be in my space. But I also make sure that I tend extra specially to that altar on Saturdays. And with that set of the hymns that I recite on Saturday, I also say a prayer to my ancestors. And so they're quite connected for me. When I'm out there under the stars doing any sort of stellar astrological magic, instead of thinking to myself, like, I want to combine with the otherworldly spirit of this particular star, I'm very much saying, like, hey, ancestor who is this luminous body in the sky, I invite you to share your stories with me. I invite you to be present in my life. And then I follow that up with, like, I talk to my mom. I'm very fortunate that my mom's obsessed with genealogy, so I can ask her about ancestral stories. And then I'm just really keen to pay attention. Like, whatever my mom decides is important to tell me today, that's probably part of the magic coming through. And I should follow that up. Or maybe a certain place comes onto my radar. I've got like 16 different places in the world that I've got lineage in. And so maybe at one point, the book about Sweden comes into my world, and I'm like, oh, Swedish ancestors want to have a chat. Let's see what the Swedish ancestors have to say. So I think part of it is just about being very open to believing, I guess is maybe the best word, believing that the stories your family tells you, the conversations that happen at the dinner table, that's part of the magic too. It's not just like, oh, I did some money magic and then I got a new job. Like, that's cool. Um, Maybe it's also an ancestor who's caring for you and paying attention to the things that you're asking for, the things that you need, who's directing you to just the right job. Maybe that little feeling of, oh, I've got two different interviews. Which one do I pick? That I for me, I always think about that as literally my kinfolk, my elders coming through and giving me good advice. But I think there's other ways of engaging it. That's our future ancestors are our living kin. So Saturday is a great day to chat with your grandparents if they're still living. Sunday or Monday, if you have a good relationship with your mother or father or somebody who held that role for you, you can use the same kind of astrological magic practice Sunday at sunrise if they're an early bird. If they're not, maybe wait till Sunday at noon. But you can use that planetary day, planetary hour, and then just kind of tweak the things that you're doing in a way that's consistent with your culture, with your lineage, with your family. There's all sorts of different ways. So I kind of think about, we have to wear clothes, we have to eat food. Can you dedicate one day a week or one meal a week to sharing it with your ancestors, or to eating an ancestral food, or learning a word or two of some language from back there, or maybe a language you didn't have the privilege of learning, in your youth? There are a few different ways, but I think there's tons of different ways if we understand that we're not tapping into, or like, Saturn, the giant gas ball, we're tapping into Saturn. I think of the planets as more like elders. They move, so they're living. And then the stars are more like ancestors. They have a luminous body, but not like a physical body. So I think of them as like, stars are ancestors, the planets are our elders. How would you approach, your jovial elder who loves to teach you stuff? That's Jupiter magic. And I
Wow.
think you can do it in reverse, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And, just to clarify for people, I think you might have said it already, but the reason that you're saying, sun for fathers, because the sun does represent in astrology, if you look at your astrology chart, sometimes the sun will represent the father and the moon will represent the mom, and Sunday is for the sun, Monday is for the moon, right? So that's why you're connecting the days of the week with these different planetary energies. And we know Saturn is our elders as well. And I love how you connected this idea of like the planets are like these, living bodies who are still with us. But then the stars, by the time the light of a star reaches us, it's like 300 million miles away or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And it would have died like 300 million years earlier or something like that. And what I really loved, like when you were talking about, understanding the planets as ancestors and family, that is about making a personal connection with the sky.
Mhm.
And one of my books, my sentimental favorite, even though I don't like to play favorites with my books, it's called Prayers to the Sky. And it's all about making that personal connection, right? Fortifying that bond that we have through understanding. Like I call that book Astrological Magic Light, because it is kind of like an understanding of how to build that emotional connection with each of these core energies that are out there, but they're also a part of you. And what a wonderful way that you have to express that and help people to do that, because I think that that is what helps people be really good astrologers. It is that personal connection that you can feel, that you then give voice to, that makes you that much better as an astrologer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm one. I'm going to check out that book because I think prayers to
I'll
the
send you a
skies.
copy.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
of
you.
course. Yeah.
That is so much how I started. I am historically a night owl. I was a bartender for a long time. There were many years where I only saw the sunrise before bed. And I got into astrological magic and was like, oh, you're supposed to do sunrise stuff. And so I did some solar magic and I was like, okay, sun, I commit to you. I will wake up for sunrise and I will say my planetary prayers at the sunrise. And for 2 years, without an alarm, I woke up before the sun, which that changes. That gets earlier and earlier for a long time of the
Mm-hmm.
year. And I was pretty, at first I was like, this is uncanny. This can't be magic. And then I was like, okay, I don't even necessarily like this, but I said I do it and it's happening. So I guess magic's real. And you can just like pray to the planets and then stuff will happen. Um, so I think that sense of prayer makes so much sense. And because of that, I was like, okay, for some people, authority figures bestow them with gifts and goodies. That's some people's solar magic. For me, it was just waking up early and making my bed every day. That's fine. But because of that, I was like, all right, let's see how else the planets manifest. And I started, doing some Mars prayers. And I was like, please, Mars, don't hurt me. Be nice, Mars. And I became obsessed with rock climbing. And I'm terrified of heights. I'm the kind of person who, I was a drama geek in high school and theater tech, but I was like, I'm not doing any lights. I cannot climb a ladder. I will freak out. No, thank you. Scaffolding freaks me out, even like step stools, to be perfectly honest. So rock climbing, I was like, you want me to like purposely be scared all the time? But I went with it and trusted that Mars is like an elder who is not, a good elder will encourage you to push your limits and not endanger you. So I was like, okay, Mars, you're being a good elder. You're not going to put me in a dangerous situation. You want me to learn something. Oh, you want me to conquer my fear. And 2 years later, I realized that you can't really conquer fear and it wouldn't be healthy to. But I did learn the difference between fear and being scared. And that sounds like two words for the same thing. So I'll try to kind of parse it out. I thought that if I, you know, what do they call it? I can't remember the word for it. I thought if I faced my fear most every day and tried to climb up high, that I would eventually become unafraid of heights. And that's not what happened. But what happened is I got to know what real fear, like your body saying, hey man, don't do that. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. I got to understand what that felt like and really notice when the tunnel vision sets in, when you get a certain type of like shake and your legs go to jelly versus just kind of being scared where your brain's like, oh no, you could fall, you could die. And I'm like, I'm 2 feet off of a giant mat. I'm not going to die if I fall. Ha ha, brain. That's an interesting story you have there. And so instead of feeling like being afraid was this bad thing that I needed to overcome, or rather the feeling of fear was this bad thing that I'm subjected to, I realized fear is a friend. Fear is there to make sure that you can check yourself before you wreck yourself. And that by getting to trust fear, by letting fear move through your body, that you can distinguish between stories that your brain tells you about terrible things that could happen versus situations that are actually dangerous. And so, I've bumped my threshold of height from the floor that I can be comfortable in, that I can be relaxed in. There's a saying in climbing to trust your feet, relax your grip. If you squeeze really tight, your forearms will get so tired that you will have to let go pretty quickly. And if you don't trust your feet, you make it so that you have to pull with your arms really hard. And I don't know about other people, but I'm a pretty big person and my arms are not strong enough to just hold me to a vertical surface. But my legs certainly are. They do it all day, every day. And so by really learning to trust that fear and trust my feet, I've found a whole new level of freedom and capability with my body. And for me, that's what Mars was. I think for other people, it's like, I love cooking all of a sudden. Look at this knife. Look at these spicy foods. I know one of my friends is like, let's eat roasted peppers all day. So yeah, to your point, it's so much about building our own language, our own relationship, and trusting that if we lean in and we say, hey, planet, hey, elder, hey, ancestor, I invite you in, that they're going to engage in a dialogue with us and give us room to really shine and thrive and grow.
Wow. Once again, everybody, Bear is back at Synchronicity University as part of the November 2024 speaker series with a magical theme overall. You'll get to learn from these incredible teachers you see on screen for as low as just $5 a class for a very limited time left. And Bear, you're brilliant. I love you. I love you as an astrologer, and I'm really looking forward to your talk.
Thank you so much. I can't say enough how much an honor it is. And if memory serves correctly, I don't know if the videos are available in an archive. And I believe it was October of 2021 that I spoke about Magic with the Planetary Days.
Yes, yeah.
So that would be a good, if you're into this, you could check out that talk and kind of be like, okay, here's some different methods for planetary day magic, and then come to the next talk and expand that and make that ancestral and relational.
Wow, that's a great idea. We'll see what we can do about offering that talk to people as well. So everybody out there, be on the lookout for that. Check out the page where you can sign up for this class, and that should have some information about that, because I really loved that talk. I remember being there for that talk. I loved it. I learned so much about understanding how the days of the week align with the different planets and planetary magic. And I'm sure that this class is only going to take that understanding to the next level. So I really look forward to it.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I love talking about anything astrology for sure, but getting into the how can you make every day and every action part of building a relationship with the planets and with your more than human kin is just the heart of the matter to me. I love talking about the technical stuff and what will happen next year, your solar return, all that, but I think diving into the spiritual practice, at least the ancestors of the art for me are very much saying, get into Platonic theurgy, practice more magic, nerd out with the ancient Greeks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's wonderful to listen, right? It can only make us better in all kinds of ways, but better as astrologers as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you again, Bear. And thank you, everybody out there, for watching. Until we connect again, take care. Bye.